Hello and welcome to Back of the Net and Beyond, where today I'm going to be speaking to former footballer Simon Church, who played for Reading, Charlton, Aberdeen and Wales. How are you doing, Simon? You okay?
Yeah, all good, thank you.
Good stuff. Thanks for coming on, by the way.
That's all right, no worries at all. Gets me out of putting the kids to bed for sure.
Yeah, me too. I know how you feel. So how's life treating you at the moment?
Yeah, it's good. Obviously, with everything that's going on, it's strange times for everyone. But yeah, I mean, in terms of business-wise, we've been trying to crack on as much as possible, and being at home with the kids is obviously quite nice at the beginning. But now it's got to the stage where you're itching for them to get back. So, but nice, it's going well. It's going well.
Good stuff. And so what you're up to nowadays, obviously you used to play football and you've retired now, so just let everyone know what you're doing nowadays on a day-to-day basis or a weekly basis.
Yeah, so since retiring, I set up a property investment company. Predominantly when we started was focused on helping athletes invest in the right stuff. It's kind of evolved into kind of a consultancy where we can help players and point them in the right direction for kind of financial advice. The reason why we did this was because when I was playing, I invested in property throughout my career, but also I invested in a lot of things that went wrong. Trusted the wrong people.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like I'm sure you're aware, a lot of my teammates and friends did as well. So we wanted to create something where trust and transparency is a huge value for myself, something that's virtually non-existent in football at the moment. So we wanted to create that. So yeah, I set that up, and then I also have a CBD sports nutrition company as well, which I run alongside that. So yeah, I'm keeping myself busy alongside some consultancy for football clubs and players as well.
Nice. You mentioned CBD. That's a massive thing over the last kind of year or two. It's been more prevalent on kind of social media and various like media outlets in terms of like the good side of CBD and what it can do for your health. So, you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, the background is throughout my career, I really struggled with injuries, recovering, sleep. So from the age of 21, I had a hip problem that got worse and worse. I had surgery in 2016 after the Euros, and I was addicted to painkillers. That, like anything for football clubs, if you've got an issue, pop one of these, son, you'll be right.
Yeah.
So then you just keep popping them,
Yeah.
masking the pain, try and get through training, try and get through games. And in the end, it was having an adverse effect on my body. And I got recommended CBD oil. And at the time, it got off the prohibited list for in full sport and WADA. So I took it and had some real positive effects from it. I'd like to think I'm slightly entrepreneurial, and I thought, okay, there's a bit of a gap in the market here for not just the positive effects it has on myself, but also what it could do for athletes, for the everyday person who's reliant on painkillers, your sleeping tablets, your tramadols, your naproxen, all this kind of stuff that people just pop just to take it away. So yeah, we've looked into that, and like you said, it's such an industry in its infancy that the more positive things are coming out of it, the better. And I think it's an industry that's only going to go in one direction at the moment. So for us, yeah, we're trying to establish ourselves as kind of the trusted source of CBD supplements.
Wow, that sounds great. I mean, there are a lot of different outlets out there, and I've kind of done a bit of research on it. I haven't gone into too much detail, but yeah, I mean, I've read some positive things about it, and I know a few people that have kind of gone down that route as well. So, in terms of, because obviously you play football, you said you've got an entrepreneurial head on you. You've obviously gone into two businesses, so not one, two, and obviously sounds like you got your hands full with both. So they're obviously, in terms of the property one, you've obviously still got an element of sports connection there because you're dealing with athletes, you mentioned. but essentially both industries are completely aside from or completely separate from football. So how did you find your transition from football, obviously when you were playing, to doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think to be honest, up to the age of 24, when I had my first daughter, things kind of changed for me, and at the time I was in the Premier League with Reading, earning a really good wage, but there was always something in the back of my mind to think, this isn't going to last forever. I've got responsibilities now. I've kind of got to look at something else, and I always knew eventually my hip would get the better of me. So I kind of looked into other things. I was investing in property at the time, but it wasn't aggressive. And like in football, your mind is 100% focused on the next game, the training, all this kind of stuff. So I wasn't aggressive with things off the pitch. And now I've transitioned out of it, I look back and I wish I was so much more aggressive and got so many things back in place, which is the message that I'm trying to kind of give to people now, because in a heartbeat, I was playing at the Euros, played in the semi-final of the Euros. 2 years later, I got the nod to say, you're not playing football ever again, and it kind of came out of nowhere. And then like any footballer, any sports man or woman, when you're out of the game, out of the industry, no one cares, and you're kind of chucked out there and fend for yourself. Find your own way.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on kind of the reasons why you kind of went down the route of retirement at a young age as well. I want to touch on that a bit later on, just because I know about it, but not everyone else does. And in terms of kind of your process, it's kind of pretty predominant in football. Again, injuries happen. It's just one of those situations where when you're playing, you're never really thinking about injury. But we've all been told as athletes that it can happen at any time. And like I said, if we can just, I want to touch on that a bit later on and go into more detail. You mentioned obviously playing in the Euros. So I know for a fact, obviously you had a good career, quite an illustrious one. Obviously you represented your country. You started at Reading. Obviously you're playing in the Premier League, and obviously you sustained a place in the team, and obviously had a successful time there. You obviously played for various teams as well throughout the leagues. What was it like playing for Reading in the Premier League?
Oh, it's amazing. I came to the club at 14, so I came through the academy, right through to the first team. I was given the opportunity to play consistently at a young age in the Championship. At the same time, I broke into the Wales national team as well, so I was playing consistently from the age of 20. So I was in a fortunate position to kind of get a taste of what it's like early on. I also learned very quickly what football is like on the other side, in terms of politics and having to deal with everything else that comes with football, fans, everything, responsibilities. So yeah, I mean, it was an incredible time, and we had an amazing experience winning the Championship. Getting promoted to the Premier League was fantastic, but unfortunately, again, when you come through an academy, you are treated differently than a player that has been brought in. Whether clubs will deny that, they probably will, but I mean, anyone who's come through an academy will tell you exactly the same. You're not what's the word? You're not kind of appreciated as much as someone you've brought in. And yeah, it was kind of, we all had that feeling at the end. We were with the club for a long time and we were very successful, but never felt we were given the same opportunities or appreciated the same as people they brought in.
And at the time, obviously, because I've experienced similar. I mean, how does it make you feel knowing that you've kind of come through the ranks and you probably know the backroom staff, and you've come through the ranks with probably some of your teammates as well, to then feel kind of not like an outcast, but to maybe not be seen as much of an asset as maybe the players that they brought in? How did that make you feel?
Yeah, I think that was probably I learned very quickly that it was a ruthless game, and there's so many other factors. Your agents, director of football, like, and I kind of learned very quickly. I also at the time had some difficult advice. I didn't know who to trust.
Yeah.
I thought I cracked it as well. I had a bit of an ego. 24. I wasn't like big time or anything like that. But I thought, you know what, I'm playing first team football for Wales consistently. You know, we just got promoted. I should be able to compete at the same level as everyone else. But yeah, it's a combination of so many things, and I think you learn quite quickly once you're in that environment consistently that it is such a ruthless sport, and you've got to look after yourself at the end of the day. It's your career, and a lot of it's out of your hands.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I always say to be an athlete, especially a footballer, you need thick skin, because one day you play for a month and the next day new manager comes in and it's a completely different scenario. And I've had that a few times as well. And again, it's not all doom and gloom, because in some ways, sometimes it worked in my favour. A new manager came in, maybe a new contract, or maybe kind of starting in the team where previous to that I maybe not have been. So it just depends, but it's so much of a roller coaster, physically and mentally. And that's kind of one message that's came across when I've been speaking to various athletes, not just footballers. And they say, look, obviously 1 minute you could be kind of high as a kite, and then next you could just be down and done through whatever scenario that you've come across. As I mentioned earlier, you played for kind of various clubs throughout the leagues, and you also had time abroad and played for Aberdeen. So what was it like playing in the Scottish SPL?
To be honest, when at the time I was in the Championship with MK Dons, and we were struggling. I think we were bottom. The manager had a rotational system for the strikers, so we were just not in form. We couldn't get anything going, and I felt for me to go and play and score some goals to get into the Wales squad, I had to leave. And with the club and the position it was in, they wouldn't allow me to another Championship club. I didn't want to go to League One, and at the time Aberdeen were the closest I think any team has been outside of Celtic and Rangers to challenge for the top. So the manager showed, he went above and beyond to convince me to come, and to be honest, I was ready to go. And yeah, it was a great experience. I didn't know much about Scottish football. I've got to admit, I'd never sat down and watched it. But I was surprised. I mean, my first game was against Celtic. It was on Sky. I scored the winner, so it couldn't have gone off to a better start. But the next game I played against Inverness. Inverness, I don't even know the name of them, but I was playing there, and then I went there, and I was like, that was a big shock because it was in front of 2,000 or 3,000. It was freezing, and I thought, okay, this is completely different league. But I loved my time up there. The people were great. They're so passionate up there, which I didn't realise about their football. And at the same time, they've got some great players in the league too.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to what you said about Inverness, because I played there when I was playing for England as a youngster, and it's like north of Scotland, and it was freezing, and the stands were just open, and it was ridiculous. The light game as well, so it was even worse, and I'm sure it was in winter, so 10 times worse. I mean, so I had a brief spell abroad, and it was the last team I played for, and it was in Iceland. And to be honest, like I said this before in someone else's podcast when I was a guest, and I basically said it was after leaving Leicester in the Premier League, it was probably the most professional I felt in terms of being a footballer, in terms of everything. Collective. So playing on the pitch, playing on a regular basis, the coaching, the staff, the professionalism, the stadium, facilities, everything. And in terms of kind of going abroad, I always say to kind of youngsters out there, it's probably easy from the outside looking in, or maybe initially thinking, well, I'll just stay where I'm kind of comfortable, maybe in the reserves, familiar with the surroundings of staff and teammates. But what would you say to like any youngster that's maybe in that in-between stage where you're not in the first team and you've made loads of appearances in the reserves, you've got an opportunity to maybe go abroad. What would you suggest? Would you advise that going forward?
100%. I think the longer, especially nowadays, the longer you don't play first team football, the less opportunities you will get to go out elsewhere. I mean, it's not like 10 years ago where a free is a blessing because you've got the pick of the clubs. Nowadays, it's ruthless. You haven't played for 6 months, so we're not taking you.
That's it.
So if you're a youngster coming through and you're playing in the under 23s and you've got the opportunity to go and play first team football, get out of the 23s because that is a complete waste of time. Because at the end of the day, you're stuck at a club and people say, yeah, you're playing under 23s, but you're not ready for the first team.
Yeah.
But by then you're 20, 21, 22, and you haven't played any first team football, your opportunities are gone. So I always believed that if I wasn't playing in the team or the manager didn't want me there, I needed to go and play football because I had my Wales career and I had to play consistently to get into that. And also I had ambition. I didn't want to sit around and I trained my whole life to get to the top level, and obviously playing with Wales opened my eyes up to playing with the elite and what it takes to play in the elite and everything that comes with playing at that level. And I wanted more of it. And unfortunately, a lot of other factors come into it. But at the end of the day, you've got to be playing football and you've got to be performing well.
100%, yeah. I second that. You also had a brief spell in Holland. What was it like over there?
Yeah, it was kind of like a last minute thing. I had the opportunity when I left Reading, I had the opportunity to move to Panathinaikos. Right. I just felt at the time it wasn't right, and I wanted to play in the Championship consistently. So I moved to Charlton, but the same manager was the manager at Holland. And once I finished the Euros, I came back. MK Dons got relegated to League One. I said I wanted to go. I had a few options abroad, and I just felt it was the right time because I'd spent so long in the Championship really, and after a while it becomes it's a grind. It is a grind. You've got to do the same things over and over. I just fancied off the back of the Euros. I fancied a new challenge.
Yeah,
and a few things fell through, and then Holland came up, and I thought, it's a manager I know. The manager knows me as a player. If you do well in the Eredivisie, it's always been known that strikers that score goals will go on to big clubs. So I thought this was a great opportunity. So I took a year. Over there, again to kind of prove myself, back myself a little bit. There was no financial reasons. It was just change of scenery. I had 2 young kids at the time, so my missus wasn't overjoyed. But I just thought it was the right time. And unfortunately, 4 games in, my hip completely went, and it was an absolute nightmare.
Jeez. Did you take the family with you, or was it just you on your own?
Yeah, it was kind of a couple of days before the transfer window. So I flew over there, got everything sorted, got a medical sorted. Flew back, and they came over for a little bit, but they just didn't take to it. My kids were so young. My missus didn't want to drive on the other side of the road. It was complete culture shock. But in terms of actually living in Holland, was an amazing experience for me because they love football. Everyone's so relaxed, everyone's so chilled out, and where we stayed was brilliant. They put me up in a lovely apartment in Maastricht, which was a really nice place, and was learning the language. But unfortunately, it was great. It was something that I really wanted to do, and just unfortunately, it turned into an absolute nightmare quite early on.
Jeez. The big one, Wales. Obviously, you made nearly 40 appearances. What was it like playing for your country and obviously playing with all those big names and playing in massive tournaments?
It's amazing. Some of the I was quite lucky to be in the squad for nearly 10 years in the first team, and every single time I got called up, I was itching to get on the pitch and excited to be around the lads because we all grew up together. We all grew up playing with each other. And especially towards when Gareth Bale came in and obviously Chris Coleman, the professionalism of everything just grew and grew and grew. And, you know, sometimes turn around, I'm playing with, you know, Ramsey's giving me the ball, I'm playing with Gareth Bale, I'm playing with Joe Allen. And they just raise the level so high without, you know, you have to be at the top level to kind of go with them. So I loved every minute of Wales, and obviously the experiences we had were incredible.
Jeez. In terms of the squad, without kind of giving an obvious answer, who do you reckon was the best player you played with whilst obviously representing Wales?
Yeah, I mean, there's only one person. Like Gareth was just on a different level. I mean, you've got good players, then you've got elite players, and then you've got the top. And he just, everyone would say the same that's played with him. He's just got that extra bit that wins you games, that he can pull out of the bag with, you know, within a minute, he's changed the game, he's won the game. I've seen him do it so many times.
Yeah.
And it's sad to see now the amount of stick he gets, and it's just
crazy,
ridiculous because people just don't get it. People don't see, like, he's on a completely different level.
I always say, I mean, sorry to cut you, but it annoys me because obviously I've been a pro. I'm not a household name. Didn't make it to the level that you kind of made it to. Only made a handful of appearances back in the day in the Premier League. But I did sustain a career for 15, 16 years, and people don't realise how hard it is to play week in, week out, day in, day out training, and sustain it for many, many years. So to do it at that top level, Ronaldo's, Messi's, the Gareth Bales, it's just ridiculous. I can't explain how hard it is to the average layman because they're never going to be able to comprehend. I mean, it's just ridiculous. What's he like as a person? Because he comes across pretty chilled and
he's so chilled. Just loves golf.
Yeah,
just loves golf. And like you said there, like, unless you've been in the environment or played professional football, you won't understand like how advanced these guys are in terms of the handful of the top players. I mean, to play consistently at the level they play at is the reason why they get paid so much money at the end of the day, is because they're freaks. They're freaks. To maintain that level is insane. And off the pitch, he's a little bit silly, a little bit childish, but he's a great guy. And the amount of stick, like, he doesn't deserve any stick. He doesn't deserve any stick. It's ridiculous. And what he's achieved in his career is unbelievable. He's just a bit of a scapegoat over there. And no one could ever question what he's done as a player and the ability he's got. So I think some of it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy, mate. It's crazy. But I mean, it doesn't surprise me just because that's how people are. So nothing in football really surprises me anymore.
It's so funny. Everyone says that, don't they?
Exactly. It's just ridiculous. Do you still speak to him now, or?
Not really. We've still got the group chat from the 2016, so it's great now. I think they're replaying a couple of games on TV at the moment, so we're kind of reliving it through a couple of videos and the chat. So it's great to catch up. But you know what it's like in football. As soon as you come out of it, it's so hard to keep in contact. Yeah,
100%. I wanna try and get him on the show, but I think I might be struggling with that one.
Goodness me, he's untouchable.
Yeah, I know. So, in terms of, obviously, we had a chat beforehand, and I said about the podcast, and my main focus is making people aware that athletes, not just footballers, but athletes as a whole, have transferable skills, which is suited to other industries and not just sport. And I don't think a lot of athletes are aware of the skills that they've got in terms of transferable skills, and I don't think many kind of organisations or industry leaders are aware. So again, the reason why I get kind of people like yourself on the show is just to tell your story and obviously mention kind of how you went about retirement, the pitfalls, the highs, if you had any, whatever it may be. Basically, just to tell your story and obviously just let people know what transferable skills you used. So, in terms of your retirement, you mentioned you hear that popped up a lot. Was that the reason why you actually retired from football?
Yeah. So I had a kind of long-standing problem, which, you know, like I said before, you just pop a painkiller and get on with it. I was always one that I really loved training. I enjoyed training. Some players don't. I loved it. So I never missed a day of training. I just pop my pills, go home, manage it, get up, and do it again. And then a bit, like one game I was playing against Feyenoord away in Holland, and I took a shot, and I just completely lost all power and everything. I think it was just a combination. It just built up, and then just went. And it wasn't until after my surgery, before my surgery, the surgeon said, we won't know how severe it is until we get in there. When I woke up, I said, "How was it?" He said, "Yeah, it was bad." Basically, he said I had a hip of an 80-year-old. I was 28
Really?
at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, so he said, you know, you should be able to get another 5 years out of it. So I said, okay, but rehab's important and get yourself there. So I was just dedicated to the cause, but it was tough to get back to those levels.
Imagine, Jesus. And I mean, 28, I think you said, that's still a young age in football terms as well. So, I mean, that must have been mind blowing. You must have been thinking, like, just sitting there scratching your head.
Yeah, off the back of the Euros, especially, I was kind of on such a high. And I thought, I've got something to prove here now. I've just played in the semi-final of the Euros. I've moved abroad, and I've moved abroad to reignite my career. I want to score goals. I want to play higher. And yeah, four games in, it went. And then I think the realisation of this is going to be a battle, not just to save my career, but a battle against myself as well. Because when you're injured, I think people from the outside say, well, how can you complain? You're still getting paid and all that kind of stuff. But they just don't get what it's like sitting in a gym, looking out, and all your mates are playing football, and they're going to play on a Saturday. And it's what you want to do. The longer you're in the physio room, the longer you're not going to be on the pitch, and it's going to be harder to get back on the pitch. So it was a tough rehab. And again, it wasn't until the surgeon actually said, you can't play football anymore. I'd recommend you not playing football, was the moment where I thought, I'm done here.
Wow. That must have been hard to take. I mean, I was lucky. I didn't really sustain many injuries. And the ones I did have weren't really long term. But you touched on it there before, and people have said, obviously, the hardest thing, or one of the hardest things in football, is not playing and being injured and watching everyone else train. And you just feel, although you try and still immerse yourself within the squad, and obviously the banter and whatever, anything else is obviously happening at that particular time, it's always hard because you just don't feel attached from a football perspective because you're not playing. But yeah, I mean, so you've retired, you've obviously got the bad news about your hip and whatever else. So you've obviously taken that and decided to move on to something else. And you mentioned at the top of the show that you obviously moved into business, and you're doing two separate things at the moment. How did you find that process? Did you get help? Because obviously I've got loads of ideas and whatever, but putting them into fruition, it's a different thing. Obviously you've done that. So how did you find that process?
It was tough. In terms of the property investment side, I set it up with my business partners who have got a lot of experience in property. I knew of them anyway and reached out. I just reached out and said, look, I've got this idea. What do you think? Do you mind having a chat about it? This was about a year before, but I never thought, we'll start putting things in place in a couple of years, and then when I get towards the end, we'll start pushing it. But within the first week of me coming out of the game, mentally I was gone, because I thought, at the time I was still at Plymouth, and I've got to be honest, they were being an absolute nightmare.
Okay.
So they were making the situation a lot harder to deal with. But once I got home, I thought, what am I going to do now? Like, I was waiting by the phone. Surely someone's going to give me a ring and say, look, do you need some help? Still waiting. I'm still waiting 2 years on. But yeah, not PFA, nothing. No former clubs. Just messages from managers and just to say, you know, gutted to hear, all the best. Give me a shout if you need anything, which was fine. But yeah, I think for the first 3 months, I was, I let myself go a little bit, ate what I want, drunk what I want, and then you kind of get into a bit of a rut where you're like, everyone's back at pre-season now. I'm not. I'm never going to play again.
Yeah.
I think mentally is the hardest thing because you're in a routine, and I've been in that routine since 16. Come out of it. Luckily, I've got my kids and my missus, but after a while, it's just pure demons you're fighting.
Yeah, no, it's tough, and that's the side that again people don't see. I mean, we've all heard people talk about like the mental side of the game and when you're not playing, but sometimes they don't realise when a club can make it difficult for you. And we've heard stories over the last few weeks about different players kind of not holding the club to ransom, but looking after themselves essentially and saying, look, it's a situation where I need to financially think of the future. I've got family and whatever else. And from a fan's perspective, they're just thinking like, you're an asset to the club. They've offered you a deal. Just take it and play and shut up. It doesn't work like that. And if a club doesn't want you, you obviously know yourself, they do all they can to get rid of you. I've had it before. I've come in on Sundays before, randomly, 6 players or whatever it was, just coming in on a Sunday. And it's like, you just get treated. Sometimes you can get treated like a dog, if that makes sense. And it's not nice. So I don't blame any player trying to look after themselves, to be honest.
No, and what the maddest thing is any other industry, there'll be an issue. There'll be a serious law. There'll be either a lawsuit or something like this. But as footballers, you've just got to take it like a good boy. You've got to take it like a good boy. Don't train with the reserves. You're not allowed to eat with everyone.
Yeah.
You've got to come in on a Sunday where everyone else is at home with their, else we'll fine you 2 weeks' wages.
Yeah, exactly.
Unbelievable.
Could never happen now. I mean, obviously I'm working in a generic job at the moment, and I can't imagine half the things that I kind of went through and friends, like former teammates have been through, ever happening outside of football. It's just not happening because clubs can get away with it, but obviously industries can't, just because they'll end up in, like you said, litigation and things like that. So yeah, it's just a different world, and unless you've been involved in it, you're never really going to understand. So in terms of obviously, so you said kind of you're obviously doing what you're doing at the moment, and it all sounds great. You said you got help from people who you knew were in the industry, but in terms of like people who are in football, did you get any help from any organisations at all? Did anyone kind of reach out and give you advice at all, or?
No, nothing. To be honest, everything that I've kind of done, I've done myself. I found straight away I had to drop my ego a little bit, because even though every footballer's got an ego, because you think, it's all right, I'll be all right. I've known loads of people. Some will reach out. Surely, why wouldn't they want to work with a footballer or something like that? And just spent days looking at the phone and nothing happening. And I think the biggest lesson I learned, and which we were talking about, the transferable skills, is the desire to go and make things happen. And the only person that's going to make something happen for you is for you to do it yourself. So I just reached out to so many people. I just looked up successful people, like on LinkedIn, joined LinkedIn, connected with successful people who I would never have even thought to connect and speak with. And I just started building that up like that and reading books. I just loved the business side of it, resented football, wanted to get away from football at the time and just find a new path. But it's difficult, and I mean, I've made a few mistakes along the way, as you do. But I mean, if I didn't have that in me, or I didn't have a look before, and I came out of football, I'd be struggling. I think, what the hell am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, you used your head and you prepared. I mean, again, part of the podcast isn't for me to say this is right and this is wrong. Because there's no right or wrong. You just need to do what you think is right for you. And you mentioned there a couple of times that you've made mistakes, but who doesn't make mistakes? I mean, it's part of the process. If you look at any kind of world leaders, entrepreneurs, people who've made loads of money, whatever it may be, they've all made mistakes. But again, it's about learning from those mistakes, and it's just part of the learning process, really. Would you say more help's needed? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but for me, my personal opinion is more help is needed, not only in football, but in sport in general, when it comes to retirement, because too often I hear stories about retirement and it always sounds negative in terms of the delivery. So when someone's talking to you as a youngster and they come into the club and it's kind of, yeah, okay, there's only going to be 1% of you making it or whatever, it just sounded negative to me. And it's not a time where you wanted to hear it because you're just starting in your career and you maybe the managers or the coaches are kind of bigging you up saying, we've got high hopes and aspirations of you. So the last thing you want is someone to come in and give you negative information. Yes, we all know that injuries can happen. You may not make it. New manager comes in, may not want you, but then you can potentially go on and make it somewhere else. And we've seen that many times before. With development, people grow, and then you've got the issues of obviously growth and obviously growing into your body and stuff like that. So there's many different facets and strands that can affect whether you make it or not. But the last thing you want is someone giving you negative information or whatever when it comes to retirement. I personally think more help's needed. One of the things that I've been speaking to various people about recently is maybe clubs can affiliate themselves with different organisations, generic ones outside of sport or inside of sport, and maybe get players to do like one day a week or 2 days a week in a work environment or a workspace, just to give them that kind of, I don't know, something more tangible or something more hands-on where they're interacting with the general public and potential customers going forward. Because for me as players, or if I was still a player and someone said there's an opportunity for you to do that, I'd more than likely do that in a generic course where I'm just going to be sitting down reading books or researching, because it's more tangible, because you can actually feel it, you can interact, you can kind of ask questions, and I just think that's more feasible, and that's just one thing that I've kind of thought about going forward. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a huge problem with football. I think football is stuck in the dark ages with it just hasn't moved with the times. It's probably the biggest industry in the world, certainly sport, and it's probably the least advanced in terms of everything else around it. The governing bodies, players, obviously the money's huge, but opportunities to look outside of the game is so tight, and sometimes it's frowned upon. So if, for example, if a player's reading a book or interested in a business that they're doing on the coach to the way to the game, the manager will say, you're too busy focusing on so and so, you're not going to play this week. And unfortunately, like that, this is where football is. And there's number one, the clubs don't care what you do outside of football, because the minute you're not a player, they don't care. So it's finding, if the player doesn't know, because people forget that football has been their lives throughout from young. All they wanted to do is focus on football, nothing else. So where do you get the skills? Like you said, how do you speak to people? Where do you go to meet people? Most of the players now are doing corporate days and looking at their watch, thinking, when can I get home? This is absolute rubbish. Where nowadays I'm thinking I should have made the most of those contacts.
Exactly. And that's just one facet. I mean, at a club in general, you've got the finance department, you've got the recruitment department, you've got whatever department. So you can go and get advice from those people, and they're there readily available. But I mean, I'll be honest, as a player, I never thought about doing that, just because I was focused on being a player. Although I did have the mindset that if I don't kind of earn enough money, then I'm probably going to have to work. And I've said this many times, that I think that did help me when it came to me making my transition. But again, you mentioned there about, and I've heard many people say this before on and off the podcast, where you could be reading something on the coach and it gets frowned upon, or you maybe have a conversation with a manager or coach and you kind of explain that you've got off the field interests. I'm not talking about myself, I'm just talking stories that I've heard, and you kind of say, oh, well, I'm doing this outside of football, and it's like, no, you need to concentrate on football, son. And it's like, I don't understand that mentality, because the stats show that if you're an athlete, I keep talking about football because obviously we've got that connection, so I'll use it again. If you're playing football and you're playing and you're playing well, it's normally interlinked with something that's happening off the field. So if you've got kind of business ventures off the field that are doing well, and you may be thinking about, like you were, pursuing that when you've retired, you kind of you're not really thinking about retirement, if that makes sense. So you haven't got that burden on your head. So the stats have shown that when a player has got off the field interests, maybe a hobby or business interest or whatever it may be, generally they perform better on the field. So I don't understand that connection. There's so many stats and whatever else floating about in football at the moment. Surely certain people within the game, clubs, whatever, must understand that stat is out there, and it kind of rings true. It makes sense for me anyway.
Oh, it makes so much sense. But until as a player you come over the other side, you don't realise, do you, how important it is, the other stuff. But in terms of clubs, I just can't see it changing in the near future, because there's such a conveyor belt of players coming in and out. They just don't care. As long as what happens on the field, they don't care. Then you're looking to your governing bodies. What support can you give me? Yeah. Oh, thanks. You give me a helpline. That's probably about it.
Yeah.
So I think it's gonna take a lot. It's gonna take a lot of players to kind of come together and create some sort of support network. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I think nowadays, I'd like to think the longer this goes on, people will be more aware of the opportunities outside of sport that you can access from early. Start building partnerships from early, start investing, start growing businesses, start meeting people. Because like you said, what you're going to do most of the time when you come home, you'll be with your family, but you're always thinking, you're always switched on to the game. So like you said, it's not rocket science to get the most out of a player. For a manager, you manage him well.
Yeah.
Make him believe that, you know, he's the best player. It's not difficult, but then also get the players in a state. If it's one of those training sessions where a couple of days before the game, it's a grind. No one's looking forward to it. You run into mannequins.
Yeah.
Players aren't going to be in a great mood. I mean, it's just not rocket science.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And you mentioned again, in terms of like athletes connecting with other people, and you mentioned LinkedIn, and I'm currently in a WhatsApp group with like current players, ex-players, and the amount of players that are still in the game, and like they're concerned about what they're going to do afterwards and making the transition. And that, like, as players, you're generally confident, but a lot of these players in the group, they've asked a question about maybe not having the confidence to approach someone, or maybe, you know, the term busy, like you're a busybody, like kind of out in football a lot, and they're kind of afraid of maybe being labelled as a busy person or busy player, whatever you want to see it as. But we've mentioned a lot on LinkedIn, on the WhatsApp group, because there's a few of us on there that have retired, and obviously we're doing things that we're kind of interested in at the moment. So we're kind of telling our story and saying, look, it's not all doom and gloom. Use LinkedIn, use your profile as a player, use your club as a player in terms of, like I said, speaking to the finance department or whatever it may be that you're interested in, and using that time whilst you're playing to eliminate things that you may be not interested in. And then it'll make it easier to find what you are interested in. Again, it depends on you as a person, because you can only do what you see fit, and everyone's got their own personality, and obviously they're obviously going to do what they need to do. But LinkedIn's massive. I mean, I've only just joined it probably a year or two ago, and there's people who I've never dreamt of connecting with. And again, I use it for the podcast, because even to get you on, I'm late on Instagram. So if I didn't have Instagram, I wouldn't have been able to get hold of you and various other people on Instagram as well. So for me, again, this is all new to me as well in terms of the podcast. I mean, I believe in my message and I feel passionate about it. But again, I know for a fact when I try and connect with people, they're naturally going to look at my Instagram profile and think, oh, you've only got 150 followers or whatever it may be, so it can't be that good. But I keep trying to explain to people, see past the followers and understand the message, and then you'll realise the reasons why I'm doing it. Because again, for me, it's not just about followers, it's about getting the message out there. And like I said before, you telling your story and it's coming from someone who's high profile and you've done it at a high level and you played at international level, people won't realise that obviously you found these struggles as well. They'll just assume that, okay, well, he's got connections everywhere, so he'll just have loads of options to choose from, and obviously that wasn't the case.
Yeah, 100% there. I think we underestimate the power of like position. Really, you know, a lot of people will be supporting you. You'll be a favourite player to a lot of people. You mentioned social media there. The amount of abuse I got throughout the years on social media, I didn't even bother. Like Instagram, I didn't even bother. And I kind of regret it now because, like you said, it's a form of reaching out and making the most of people. Like you said, followers and stuff, it's irrelevant because people buy followers now. It's just pointless. But in terms of making connections and spreading the word, like podcasts, for example, the amount of reach you can get, and people are generally interested and generally looking for this kind of information and connecting with people. And I think that's the biggest lesson I learned outside of football. Like when I came over the other side of football, is the importance of connecting with people who are like-minded, who have experienced the same things, who have experienced successful things. And you can choose who you connect with, who you speak to. And I think there's so much value for ex-professional sportsmen and women to provide to people in these industries, high-powered, even sales, mentality. So many opportunities and so many skills that you can transfer across, but it's getting to that situation where I'm actually going to start reaching out and having a look and having a think about what direction I want to do.
That's it. Because I mean, we can talk all day about more help's needed for athletes and whatever else, but if you haven't got that kind of understanding or the willingness to go out there and make things happen for yourself, then it's never going to happen. In terms of transferable skills, then, so what do you think you used in terms of transferable skills from football to doing what you're doing now?
I think I'm quite. I'm extremely dedicated. I was a busy pro. I was like, so I'll get called busy all the time. I just love it. But I think I can transfer that in because I gave 100% every training session, every match. And coming into the business world, I had an idea, and do you know what? I just said, do you know what? Fuck it, let's just do it. See what happens. We'll learn as we go across. And I think that was, I had that instilled in me where I had the confidence from playing in, huge games. I was on the biggest stage getting so much abuse. And it can't get much harder than that. I mean, you're telling me in the real world, if anyone tells me, oh, you haven't done that very well. All right, man. That's not gonna bother me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same.
So I think you just build that resilience against anything, because the high, like you touched on before, the highs and lows of being an athlete, and one day having a bad game, dealing with that, because people will think, oh, he's had a bad game, but he's all right, he gets paid, he doesn't care. But you come home and it ruins your weekend, it ruins your day, it can sit on you for ages. And then how do you transfer that into the business world? There's nothing that will give you that high, and there's nothing that will give you that low. So I think you've experienced the worst or the best, transferring that into now. If you feel like there's nothing that can really stop you from getting to where you want to be. That's how I feel anyway. I feel like I've been through the worst of the worst. I've been through the best of the best. And to be honest, there's nothing that touches playing in front of thousands of people and scoring a goal. And there's also nothing that touches when you've missed a sitter and everyone's caning you. And like, it's just, no one can touch that.
That's true. That's true. Before we go, let us know the names of the companies that you're running at the moment, where people can find you.
So property investment companies, Church Investments was the original name. Took me about 2 seconds to think of it. Church Investments and CBD Performance, both on Instagram. Both find the names: Instagram, LinkedIn. I don't know how to use Facebook, to be honest. I'm one of those. Hence why it took me half an hour to set up a Zoom call.
Nah, brilliant, mate. Like I said, appreciate coming on. Really enjoyed the chat. Good luck in everything you do going forward. Keep in touch, stay positive, and then we'll go from there. I'll keep trying to spread the message about obviously transferable skills and athletes having those skills and also making the transition as well. Yeah, like I said, thanks for coming on. Hope you enjoyed it, mate.
Perfect, no problem at all. No problem,
mate. See you soon.
Cheers, mate. Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.